Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to take a look at how to add polynomials. This is actually pretty simple. It's something you've already done. We've just done it in a different form where we called it combining like terms. Ideally, it's the same thing. So simply adding polynomials, that's all we're doing. We're combining like terms. If you'll recall, like terms are terms that have the same exponent raised to the same power. Remember, we can only combine the same ones. We can't combine different ones. Also, don't forget about the commutative, which means order doesn't matter in addition, and the associative, which means grouping doesn't matter in addition properties to help you do this. So everything on this board should be a review from previous videos. Hopefully that comes to mind. If not, you can check your notes, your previous notes. You can even go back and rewatch those videos if you needed to. All right, there's two different methods in basically the setup of this. We have the horizontal method, which means I have them next to each other, or if you prefer vertical method for adding, you can stack them on top of each other. I'm kind of partial to the horizontal. It's just the way I've always done it. But here you'll notice, if you look at this, I have two trinomials. There's 3 terms in each. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking, where are my like terms? And you'll notice that I color-coded them for you. This is an x squared term. This is an x squared term. So I underlined them both in blue. When I combine those, when I add 3x squared and x squared, I get 4x squared. Because remember, don't forget, there's an implied 1 here. We don't write the 1, but if I have x squared, that means I have 1x squared. The same way if I have a apple, that means I have 1 apple. Sorry, an apple, bad grammar. So always remember there's that implied 1. Don't forget about that. Then you'll notice in orange, I underlined both of my x terms. These are both x to the first power. So they're alike, we can combine them. So I have a positive 2x and a positive 5x. You always want to look at the signs in front of them so that you're making sure you're combining them correctly. And that goes back to your integer rules. And again, if you're still confused on the integer rules, you can go back and rewatch that video as well. So I combine those to get 7x. And then finally in purple, I underlined what we would call our constants, meaning they don't have a variable. The numbers without a variable, we can combine. You know how to do that. But if you look, this is a negative 5 and a negative 3. You have to pay attention to those signs in front of that. So don't try to write plus 8. It's a negative 5 and negative 3, or a minus 5 and a minus 3, which gives me a minus or a negative 8. So make sure you're really paying attention to the signs that you have. And I would encourage you to go through and color code to make sure that you're combining them properly, or even, you can cross them out as you add so you don't get confused and you make sure you combine the right things. The other way, some kids prefer to stack them, set them up vertically, so like terms are on top of each other. So here you'll notice I have 2x squared plus 3x minus 4 on top, and then underneath I've already lined up the like terms so that I can just add in columns. So I have negative 2x squared, so again you'll see I drew the box around the two that are the same. 2x squared and negative 2x squared gives me 0. I didn't write that because there's really no point in writing 0 plus something, because our 0 property tells us that anything plus 0 is itself. So we don't need to write the 0 plus. They canceled out. I have a positive 2x and a positive 3x, which gives me a positive 5x. So again, you'll see I showed you where the like terms were. And I combine my constants again. Again, look, I have a negative 4 and a positive 7, which is why I wound up with plus 3 or positive 3, okay? Again, just make sure you're paying attention to your signs. So you can pick whichever method works for you. On the examples, I'm going to use the horizontal method, but you can flip it. If it's easier for you to stack them, by all means, stack them. All right, so we'll do a few examples here to see if you that. So the first thing I'm going to do when I look here is I'm just going to underline in color code, where are my like terms. So I have an x squared term here. I have an x squared term here. I have an x term here. I have an x term here. And then you'll notice there's this lonely little constant over here. There's nothing to combine him with, so he's just going to get moved over into the answer. Okay? So we're combining our purples. A negative 2x and a positive 2x is going to give me what? 0. That's our additive inverse rule. Anything plus its additive inverse equals 0. I have a positive 3x and a negative 4x. So what does that leave me with? That leaves me with negative 1x. What I'm going to write, I'm not going to write the 1, because remember, that's always implied. So by writing negative x, I'm saying I have negative 1x. But we don't have to write that 1. Then I had this plus 7. I didn't have anything to combine it with. So I'm just going to copy it over into my answer. My answer is negative x plus 7. Remember, don't try to go any further. A lot of kids try to continue combining. These aren't like terms. Nothing else can be combined. That's my answer. Let's take a look at the next one. I have an x squared term. I have another x squared term. I have an x term. And I have an x term. And I have two constants right here. So again, we're just going to combine the terms that are alike. 2x squared and negative x squared. So remember, this is like saying negative 1x squared. So 2 and negative 1 give me what? They give me 1x squared. Again, remember, I'm not writing the 1, it's implied. So I have an x squared. Remember, pay attention to our signs. Negative 6x, negative 3x. So negative 6 and negative 3 give me negative 9 x's. I have a positive 5, a positive 4, so plus 9. So my answer is x squared minus 9x plus 9. Don't try to go any further. There's nothing else you can combine. That's the answer. And sometimes it just throws kids off because you want one answer and this has 3 different terms in it. That's okay. It's a polynomial answer. That's what I'm looking for. I've combined like terms. All right. Here I have only one x squared term, so I don't have anything to combine it with, which means it's just going to get written into my answer. I have an x term, and I have an x term over here, and then I have one constant, which means that's not getting combined with anything either. Now, what I'm going to do when I write this, we always want to write it in standard form. So I'm going to start here with my x squared term, which didn't have anything to combine with. So I'm just rewriting it. There's a minus in front of it, which makes it a negative 4x squared. Okay, there's nothing to combine it with. I'm just rewriting it, and my answer, it stayed there. I have a 3x and a negative 4x, which leaves me with a negative 1x. So again, you're seeing I'm writing minus x. I'm not going to write the 1 in there because it's implied. And then I have this 2, which is a positive, which means we're going to write a plus 2 here because there's nothing to combine that with. So if there's nothing to combine it with, don't drop it out. It still belongs in your answer. Really, there were only 2 things I was combining. The rest was just getting written over on the other side. Okay? All right, in this one, you'll notice I have 3 different terms I'm adding. Not a big deal, still just doing the same thing. Combining like terms where we see them, and remembering that order and grouping doesn't matter in addition. So I have an x squared term, and I have another x squared term. I have an x term, and another x term here. And then I have a constant here and a constant here. Okay? So I'm just going to go in order of descending order by the exponent. So I'm going to start with my x squared term, so it's in standard form. I have a negative 4x and a negative 5x. Oh, sorry, x squared, which gives me a negative 9x squared. Okay, and if it helps, go ahead and cross those out so you don't get confused. I have a 2x and another x. Again, remember, there was no coefficient, so that's an implied 1, which means I have 3x. Then I have, remember, negative 3 and a positive 4, which leaves me with a positive 1, so I'm going to write plus 1 at the end. There's my answer. I've combined all of my terms, and we've completed the problem. All right? If you're confused at all or you have any questions, you can go ahead and you can rewatch some of the previous videos that I mentioned earlier. Those might help remind you of some of the concepts we've talked about before. You can rewatch this video, or you know where to ask questions. Have a good night.